What's good, guys? Welcome back to Behind the Dugouts for another transfer news video. And as ever, there is just so much to go through. It doesn't stop. We've got stadium news, player rumours, some here we goes, and even an interesting story on a world-renowned rapper and a Welsh football club. We're going to get into all of that in this video. We're going to start off at home with Chelsea. Now, there's been an update on the stadium plans. A little bit more information has come out. Now, the stadium plans have been going on for years, even back in the Abramovich era, where there was talks of, increasing the stadium, either staying at Stamford Bridge or potentially moving to Earls Court. But there's been an update on this. So this is what has been said so far. Todd Boehly wants a sports empire at Chelsea, where the new stadium at Earls Court would hold things like basketball court that could be designed to host MLB, with Chelsea still at the focus, whereas Clearlake are more thinking about the Chelsea/Strasbourg football empire. And if they can get the other things added to the new stadium, then so be it. So what I take from this is there's clearly two different visions of how they want to progress with the stadium. It's clear that Todd Boehly wants to move to Earls Court. Again, Earls Court it's got a better structure. There's more space for the stadium to be built. And from what he wants to do in terms of growing the sporting empire, as he calls it, it's a very American thing. What he's trying to do, or his vision there, is to Americanize this really and just get as many sports in, similar to what Tottenham's doing. Tottenham hosting the boxing, and NFL and things like that. So it is a good revenue source, as it will bring in money to the club 100%, because there's no way Tottenham are going to compete with us. They wouldn't even competed with us before we were world champions. And now they definitely never going to compete with us. So anything that they would have been hosted is going to be pulled over to us straight away. So I get it from a business perspective. Again, we've got to understand that these guys aren't so much footballing guys, they're businessmen. And their plan is to, grow the business. I'd love to stay at the Bridge. If that's home, that's where it's always been. And that's where I'd like to stay. But you have to think about it. We are behind already in terms of seating compared to, the top clubs in our league. And then when you look at stadiums like the Camp Nou and, Real Madrid Stadium, where they're eclipsing 80, 90,000 seats, we are so far behind. I think we've got about 45, 46,000 seats. So in terms of revenue, gate revenue that they're bringing in at each match, we are behind some of the big clubs in the country. So there is a need to expand. But because we've sort of left it so long, we can't just expand to 60,000 seats, which is probably the max capacity that you're going to get at the Bridge, unless they start building upwards, in a sense, maybe dropping the stadium or the pitch a little bit lower and building straight up, similar to how the Camp Nou is. But other than that, there's not a lot of space for them to expand the Bridge. And what we don't want to do, again, a lot of clubs will now be looking to increase from 60 to higher, especially the bigger clubs. So we're just always going to be behind. If we go from 46 to 60 and then these other clubs move to 80, 90, then we're going to have to move again. So on the side of, I do want to stay at the Bridge and, grow and, stay bound to there, where Chelsea has always been from a business perspective and revenue and bringing in more money in terms of the club and allowing more fans to get in to actually see the football, it would make sense to potentially go to Earls Court. Now, it's not to say that Clearlake don't have the same vision in terms of moving to Earls Court, but from the sounds of it, they're not too fussed about the other aspects of it, in terms of bringing in revenue from other sources, from other sports, which I don't mind that, because although the revenue is good, the money is good, I'm not fussed about what basketball games we can hold and what boxing events we can hold, because it's not an interest to me. My interest is Chelsea Football Club. That's it. I want us to play football and I want us to grow the football. That's all my focus is on, not what next baseball game are we going to hold at the stadium. It's not of interest to me. So on that side, I get it from Clearlake, and it does make sense that they're only focusing on the football aspect. And that's probably the reason why maybe this is taking so much time. I mean, back in the Abramovich era, there was an agreed plan. He had a plan set out. Stadium, had agreed, and it just sort of ended in nothing. It just went dead. And they've been talking about the stadium replan since coming in and taking over Clearlake and Top Only have. And again, it hasn't just materialized into anything other than more updates, more rumors, nothing else. And this could be part of the reasons they can't agree exactly on the vision, on the direction that they want to go in. But I'm hoping this is going to come to a conclusion soon, because again, it needs to grow. We need to expand. We need to build a stadium relatively soon, within the next sort of, I would say, five years or so, because it's not, again, once it's agreed, it's not going to be done overnight. It's going to take years and years. So we are going to spend some time away from the bridge, potentially, if they're going to expand on the bridge. If they move to Earls Court, we can stay at the bridge while they're building that. So that would probably be the best option, to build on Earls Court and then, you know, continue to use Stamford Bridge in the meantime while that is being built. But, you know, let me know your thoughts on that. Where would you happily move to Earls Court, or do you want us to stay at the bridge, expand on the bridge, and go as, you know, as far as we can with the bridge? Drop a comment below. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Moving on to the latest rumours in terms of players. Now, there has been an update on how the club are going to approach the remainder of the window. You know, what's their vision, how they see best fit to navigate the entirety of the window. And this is what's come out, a little piece by The Athletic. More arrivals could be made, but they will be dependent on player departures. This is the main focus for the time being. The plan is to smooth more exits than incomings before the end of the window. Chelsea have a number of squad members who are not part of their long-term plans and are looking to go elsewhere. Those on the list include Raheem Sterling, Ben Chilwell, João Felix, Renato Veiga, Amanda Broya, Leslie Ugochukwu, and Axel Disasi. And again, this does make sense. You know, we heard a little bit about this during the Club World Cup, that the club were going to focus after to get a lot of the deadwood shifted out, because we've got a very bloated squad, and not bloated in terms of loads of players that we're going to use, just bloated in an abundance of players that are not fit for purpose, that no longer have a place long-term in the squad, that we need to find potential moves for. And a lot of those players, especially the likes of Ben Chilwell and Raheem Sterling, are on quite significant wages, which does make it a bit difficult to shift those players, especially that haven't been playing well or not playing at all. So the likes of Raheem Sterling and Ben Chilwell, I think, are going to be quite difficult to shift on, but I do expect the club to find a potential move for all these players. And though they're saying that any more incomings is going to be dependent on outgoings, we've had the news about Jackson potentially leaving, but before that, they were still mentioning that, you know, Chelsea wanted 9 attackers. They still are looking to bring another attacker in, and this was before the Jackson news was coming around that he was potentially up for sale. So I still think there is the idea to bring in another attacker, but it does make sense. They need to shift more of this deadwood out. They need to get rid of some players, bring in some revenue to allow them to bring in some more quality and players that we're actually going to use long term. So I expect, you know, over the next week or so, we're going to see quite a lot of players shifted out. I think João Felix might be the first one. The Benfica links with him have been going on for quite some time. There's been rumours floated around. He's even, you know, sort of made it public that he would be happy to go back there. I think he might be the first one that we see out of the high-profile names that we have, would be gone. And it's unfortunate. I like João Felix. I was a player that I hoped would work here, but, you know, in reality, he was only brought in as a PSR move and to help get Conor Gallagher out of the door. That was the only reason he come in. I don't think there was any intention to really use João Felix by Maresca or the club. I think that's just how it was as a make weight player. But, you know, we'll see how this unfolds. But as I said, I do expect some movements in terms of getting players out to happen pretty quickly. Now, saying that, even though the club are focusing on getting players out, there will still always be links and rumours and players that they will still approach to make an inquiry to see, you know, where they are in terms of market and the potential of making the signing, i.e. like getting the transfer fee if they've got a release clause, just getting out little bits of information on the potential players. And one of them, in particular, Arsenal fans, get your tissues out, is Eberechi Eze from Crystal Palace. a player that has been courted by Arsenal, and they have made approaches the entirety of the transfer window, but with no advancements, no real movements on it, just rumours, questions being asked, nothing real concrete. And apparently, Chelsea have made some advancements in talking to his agent. Now, it's under my understanding that there is about a 65 million release clause for Eze, which is a fair price for the type of player he is. Again, a little bit out of our age model in terms he's 27, he's not below 25, but he's got Premier League experience. He has basically taken that Crystal Palace's team on his shoulders, especially since Elise left to go to Bayern Munich last season. He carried this Crystal Palace team, won them the FA Cup, and he's a very important player. So 65 million is, in and around the region what I would expect for this type of player. He is a versatile player. He can play left wing, right wing, through the middle as a false nine, so fits the versatility mold, which we clearly have got in our minds at the moment. That's how we're going to structure the team, which I think is a brilliant idea to have loads of versatile players, which means you can change the game tactically whenever you want just by moving a few players around. You can change the style of football you want to play. It just makes perfect sense for how the club's going to move forward. And we saw how well that can work in the Club World Cup final against PSG. However, with Eze, how they've done it is they've inquired to see where the player's head's at, which I think is the right approach, because the club don't want to waste time on players that have no intention of, moving to Chelsea. Similar to how the Mbeumo situation has been at the moment, or the Victor Gyökeres one, where they've got no intention of even entertaining talks with any other clubs. They only focused on one club in particular. So Eze could be in the same situation. Arsenal have been courting him for so long, no movements, but he could have it that that's where he wants to move. And for Chelsea, if, they make the inquiry with the agent and he comes back and says Eze doesn't want to go anywhere else, then there's no point in wasting time. I don't think that's the case. I think if Eze found out we were interested in him, I think he would jump at the chance to move. We have quite a good relationship with Palace as well, so it could be a negotiation on how we have the release clause in a payment structure, which could work in our favour in terms of PSR and just, amortizing that money over his contract. So there's lots of things that work in our favour with this. It's whether the club are going to potentially move out of their mould of young players, low wages, because this would definitely be out of their normal way of doing business in terms of getting an older, more experienced player in, which could be the change from winning trophies. Maybe they're now seeing that we've got a lot of these young players that are building just to sprinkle a little dab of experience across these would increase the output even further, and maybe even bring on the likes of the Jamie Gittins and the Estevals that are coming in that could learn off the more experienced Eze, that would come in and sort of take them under the wing, if you know what I mean. So there is that potential. I like Eze. I've liked Eze since he was at QPR. I think he is a quality footballer, and I would love to have him in the team. 100%. I think he would elevate his team. I don't think he would come in and just be a bench player. He would push to be a starter, if not come in and be a starter straight away, and have the other players that are, potentially competing for his position to elevate their game and to compete and push themselves to match his level, because he would immediately come in and increase the level. There's no doubt about it. For what he's done at Crystal Palace, for what he was doing at QPR, he's got the qualities to play at, the top level. But for now, this one is just a rumour. Arsenal fans, I would be a little bit worried, because, when Chelsea come in, especially as world champions, we get what we want. So keep your tissues ready, Arsenal fans, because I know you've had a bit of a torrid time with the Madueke situation, and it would just be the icing on the cake if we was to get Eze instead of you as well. But we'll leave that one for another time. Now, another player that's been mentioned is Morgan Rogers, another player that I think is quite widely admired within not just Chelsea Football Club and the owners, but the fan base. I think a lot of the fan base would agree that out of all the players that we're being linked to in terms of that last attacking option, he's probably the one that's most suited for the squad. I think the one that the fans would be most excited with, especially myself. I think if it was between Eze and Rodgers, I would take Rodgers just because of what he's done and his potential. Again, he's about 5-6 years younger than Eze. His ceiling is so much higher just by the way that he's performing. He's got the chemistry in terms of he was part of that under-23 Man City squad, so he's going to link up well with Gittins, Palmer, Delap. He's worked with Maresca before, so there's a lot going for the Rodgers deal. However, there's also a lot that will hold the Rodgers deal back. This is the latest on Morgan Rodgers. Aston Villa are reportedly willing to do business if a fee of at least 80 million for Morgan Rodgers arrives their way as they look to put themselves in a stronger position PSR-wise. Now, this is expected. It's been widely known that Aston Villa have PSR issues and they need to generate funds. And Morgan Rodgers, being one of their most vital, important assets in the team next to Ollie Watkins, he's a player that's going to generate those funds. And I think because of the PSR issues, it's probably slapped on about 15-20 mil on top of what you would have got him had they not had any issues. In terms of the player, I've obviously mentioned that he would be a great fit out of all the other players. He's also, I would say, the club's dream signing with the versatility and everything that it comes with him. It's just the price that I think would make us back off for the moment unless we shift out a lot of players. There has been talks that potentially, I did my video on Jackson, potential link to Aston Villa. There could be a swap deal done there, but I think it would be a situation similar to the Amari Kellyman situation where it would be separate deals because both clubs would need money on the books and Aston Villa specifically need that money on the books. So a swap deal would anything to do with Nicholas Jackson and Morgan Rodgers would be a separate deal, but it could potentially happen, especially being that there are links with Ollie Watkins to Man United now that they've signed Mbeumo, but we're going to get onto in a second. There are the links there, so Aston Villa would be in the market for a striker and Nicholas Jackson being one that they could potentially go for. We know that they like the player. So there is an opportunity to do a deal there. Now, another link that we do have, and it's a link that I'm not particularly fond of, is the Garnacho link. Now, the player himself, he's done okay in the Premier League. He fits the bill in terms of young player and wages, but it's what he does outside of the football and the publicity that he brings outside of football. And that's a problem. I think it would not work with the club. I think he would bring in some negative publicity if things aren't going his way, if he's not starting. You've seen how he acted under Amarin. In terms of his footballing ability, he hasn't set the world alight. He hasn't done anything where I go, oh yeah, I'd take him. He's a quality player. But I also have to factor in that he's playing for Man United, a Man United team that tend to just kill players at the moment. When we look at, through their squad, they probably need to get rid of half their squad. But Garnacho for me, it doesn't make sense. I think there's just too much wrong with the situation for it to warrant a risk in terms of, I think they're looking around, he's going to command a big fee. He's going to probably command around 60 to 70 million, I would reckon, unless Man United are really desperate to get rid of him. And if that's the case, I'd rather spend an extra 10 million and get Rodgers instead. I would not spend that type of money on Garnacho, considering what he's going to bring. But you just never know. It's a link that's been linked, for a while, and it's not gone away, which worries me a little bit. I was hoping it would be dead by now, or somebody else would be in for Garnacho, and we can, all rest easy. But it's still sticking around. It's like a bad smell. Let's just, I hope personally that it doesn't happen, but you just never know with the club. There's another name that's been touted as of the last day or so. And this is, I would say, this player's more of not so much the club inquiring, but the player just offering himself out to the club. So this is the latest on Xavi Simons. Xavi Simons wants to leave Leipzig this summer. Leipzig would demand well over 50 million. Simons has now bought in agent Ali Barat. He is set to approach London clubs on Xavi's behalf. Then there's also this. Xavi Simons prefers a move to the Premier League and has bought in super agent Ali Barat to help facilitate a move. Barat is expected to approach Chelsea. RB Leipzig will want significantly more than the 43 million they spent on him in the winter. How do I feel about this one? Simmons, he's a good player. He's technically really good. I've liked him in spells at Leipzig. He's not really settled, but for the price and again the other options that we have, he would not be even my third or fourth pick at the moment. Again, I put him above Garnacho, but again, it's not a player that I think we particularly need. I don't think he would fit the system and the way that we want to play. Yes, he's got tons of ability. Yes, he's young, but I think this is more leaning on the side that it's the player wanting to move. So he's just giving himself out, and being that we are now world champions, of course he's going to want to play for the world champions. So and I think there's some links with that agent. I believe he's Moises Caicedo's agent, so it would make sense that he would come to Chelsea first to offer one of his new clients. But I think that's as far as it's going to go. I don't see this deal in particular materializing in any shape or form. I think this would probably be the most that we'll hear about it. Now he may still get a Premier League move. I just don't think it will be to Chelsea. And again, me personally, I don't think we need him. I think we should go for another option instead. Now, Man United fans, you can get your party poppers out and have a celebration, because after 3 years of transfer saga with Bryan Mbeumo, you have finally completed the deal. I know, an absolute miracle, but this is the latest on Bryan Mbeumo. Exclusive: Manchester United reach agreement with Brentford to sign Bryan Mbeumo. Deal between the clubs struck at 65 million guaranteed, up to 6 million add-ons, full instalments. 26-year-old forward only wanted Man United. And then, of course, we've got the Fabrizio tweet. The here we go, Bryan Mbeumo to Manchester United. Here we go. Green light from Brentford. Club-to-club agreement reached for 70 million package, as The Athletic reports. Contract agreed weeks ago, more like months ago, Fabrizio, with Mbeumo, as he only wanted Man United move. Celebrations are in order for United fans. You finally got it done. I think you've paid well over the price. Mbeumo, for me, is a good player. It's a saga that has dragged. And for a player that only wanted Man United, I would have expected them to get this done a lot sooner. But it is what it is. It's over now. We won't be hearing any more. I think United fans are pretty happy with the deal, but they've got a lot more problems to solve than this one signing. To be fair, they've spent a good chunk of money on 2 players where they needed to rebuild their whole squad. So I don't know where that's really going to leave them. And now they're talking about going after Ollie Watkins, another player that's going to command a big fee. So I think they may potentially struggle, but we will see. You never know with Man United. Now, we also have a little update on one of our academy boys in Alfie Gilchrist. Had a little stint under Pochettino. Did well for himself. Got himself a loan move. He looks like an absolute nutcase. He plays like a nutcase. Reminded me of an old school defender, but it does look like he is potentially going to be on his way out. So this is the latest on Alfie Gilchrist. Multiple championship clubs are interested in Alfie Gilchrist. Teams from Saudi are also interested. It's always sad when, we're hearing about a Cobham boy go, especially one that has featured in the first team, did score himself a goal as well. But yeah, I expected this at some point. Again, not everybody that comes through the academy is going to make it. And he did pretty well in the championship. I think a championship move would be good for him. However, if he was going to go to Saudi, which apparently there are some clubs interested in, Alfie, for the Blues, get yourself a 40, 50 million pound move. That would be unreal for us in terms of revenue. But no, I wish him all the best. Again, I thought he's got so much passion, and I do love to see the Cobham boys, thrive and, play football. So if he's going to go away and play, his best football and do well for himself, then I wish him all the best. And we'll definitely keep an eye on him in the future, and I'm sure his name will pop up in the future. And lastly, I wanted to finish on this story, as I thought it was quite interesting, quite funny to read. But Snoop Dogg has now become one of Swansea's biggest investors and co-owner. I thought that's brilliant. I, love Snoop Dogg's music, so it was quite funny for me to see that. I think it's brilliant. A lot of we've seen with the Ryan Reynolds and a coming into Wrexham and building that up. Though I don't think it's going to be a similar situation, it's nice to see injecting money into these type of clubs to help build them sort of back up. There was a time where Swansea was in the Premier League. So it's brilliant. You know, now on match days, they're probably going to be selling pie, chips and a spliff. So, you'll see that smoke cloud over the stadium quite often with Snoop Dogg in town. So I thought that was brilliant. And I wish Swansea and Snoop Dogg all the best. And hopefully we can see him in the Premier League again one day and have Snoop Dogg over the bridge. I think that would be brilliant. But for now, that's all from me, guys. If you're enjoying the content, please hit that like button. Drop a comment below. Feedback is greatly appreciated. And I will catch you in the next one.